agenda. I was going to put the winter storms on here, but I see you're going to probably be covering that in your update. Sure. So I don't think we need to put that on. I would like to just add climate emergency, I guess. I think that just needs to be an update from council. So 7.4. It's not, some council hasn't declared an emergency. I'll get into that. Anybody else got anything they want to add to the agenda?
No.
Okay, can I have a motion to adopt the agenda? Thank you, thank you. Okay, it passed.
Okay.
By general consent. How about the minutes? This is the minutes that I don't think I remember. Oh, that's, oh, they're from September. Okay.
September 25th.
I wasn't. That's right, from recent staff. This one. I saw the main resolutions there. And
It's just a typo on page 6. Chair.
Otherwise, it looks like the motions I've got noted down here are next. And, I think the, that other, on page 7, I think we voted on those two separately. Oh, no, that's fine, never mind, I can see. But didn't we pass 2? Okay.
2 related to that one topic.
Yeah, it was in your report here. There was 2 resolutions and that one page. What is that? Is that in your update?
So you're talking about page 10 of the agenda,
Thank you.
10 or 7?
I think.
Yeah, it's page 10. Okay. And those are both from September, yeah. Okay, that's the earlier one. That was the carried unanimously on page 6. Okay, I just want to make sure they're both there and correct. I'm satisfied. How about everybody else?
Yeah.
Hearing nothing?
Yep.
Okay. General approval, the minutes are carried. Let me know if anybody wants me to do more formal.
No, that's fine.
And public comments, anybody got anything to say out there? You've got 5 minutes on the agenda?
I'm here because I went to a fire hall meeting, one of the fire hall meetings.
Introduce yourself and where
I'm
you live.
Fitch Katie.
And you live on?
I live on Mount Gardner Road. And I went to one of the fire hall, Fire Smart meetings, and in the dry season. And we've had a dry winter. Also read the New Yorker article a couple Julys ago about the subduction zone. And think that there's a lot of work to be done in this year on the island, and interested in what's going on and maybe participating, or would like to participate in some fashion.
Okay, thank you for your interest. All right.
Maybe Jen can provide an update about our Fire Smart grant.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, not yet. Not officially releasable, sorry.
Isn't it April 11th? We have another Fire Smart program.
Yeah, I can't talk about that. We have 3
Yeah.
Fire Smart presentations planned again for this year.
How often does this committee meet?
This particular one only meets 4 times a year because this is the one that is more concerned with the bylaws and the supervising Jen and or sort of guiding the whole emergency work program. There's another committee which is called the
Emergency Program Management Committee?
That one is a bigger group of people, And that one meets more often.
It's more the operational committee, this is the policy setting level.
Yeah. So you might be interested in that other one too.
Great.
This one has the word executive in it.
I think you'd definitely be interested in the other one, because it gets into the nuts and bolts and stuff like that, details, and it's very, it's quite detailed.
He came in! Hooray!
Oh.
Welcome, Bill. Oh, sorry.
Oh, man.
Hello.
You're looking
It's a
good.
great hair.
You want to see my leg?
No.
Are you
More,
You
How
could
about
come if you
comfy
want.
chair?
more colors than a pride
Have,
flag.
have a more adjustable chair here, Brian. Great.
Good day.
Okay.
I've got
Look at that, he's got a lot of paper
a
shorts.
spare pants.
Yes.
But Fitch, the management committee also involves all the local stakeholders like the RCMP, BC Ambulance, and I think you would probably find that of interest.
And the neighborhood emergency, program. Anyway, it's got more kind of
Good.
island activities in it, I would say. You
And
might be interested.
We've talked about some of the volunteer programs as well, so I think Fitch is just trying to get a lay of the land.
Yeah,
Yeah.
good, okay. And thank you. You're okay? All right. Then we're gonna, all right. And nothing from the dog?
No, she's asleep.
Okay. We're gonna skip item 4 until, oh, here she comes.
Good morning.
Councillor Morse arrives. Okay.
Yeah, I probably don't want to sit in front of the screen.
Yeah. Have a seat.
You rushed in there.
Or just if you had me walking everybody. Oh, I got it.
Thank you. And we're just on item 4 of the agenda.
Sue Ellen's chairing until we appoint the chair.
Ah,
We're waiting to
okay.
appoint the chair until you.
Oh, okay. We're just on item 4, which is election of chair. And we've had a little bit of arm twisting going on here, general arm twisting. And we do have a candidate for chair who's not an elected official, and that's Bill Hayes. Does anybody else want to?
I'll nominate Bill Hayes.
Okay. Don't interrupt me or anything.
Well, I thought it was usually open for nomination. Is the process.
Anybody want to second that nomination? Do we have to do that? Thank you, Kathy. Anybody else like to be nominated?
Brand, would like to be nominated?
No? No?
Thank you.
Okay. Hearing no more nominations, I would like to call for the vote. All those in favor of Bill Hayes being the chair?
Both hands.
Yeah, thank you, Bill. That's wonderful. Bill Hayes. And now we're moving on to election of a vice chair, but for now I'm going to turn it back over to Bill Hayes to be the chair.
Thank you, Sue Ellen. Bear with me, as I'm not usually doing this in public, only in private. So bear with me as I kind of scramble through here with help. This is item 4.2, election of the vice chair. And could we have some nominations for that role?
Well, since Raiden isn't here.
Is that fair?
Brian, is that something you would be interested in?
The odd time when Bill can't come. This is only 4 meetings a year.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'll nominate Brian.
I'll second that nomination.
Okay. You sure?
Yeah.
And then if you decide to withdraw or whatever, later, let us know.
I didn't have to do anything last year, so
Okay.
so it was a good choice.
I'm glad John not did anything this year.
You just make sure you pick the meeting dates when Bill's always going to be around.
Oh, by the way. Are there any other nominations for the role of position of vice chair? If not, I will call the nominations closed and call for a vote on the position of vice chair for Brian Billington. All those in
We'll go
favour?
with it, yeah, well,
You alone said I put my hand up.
Very good.
So I declare the nomination passed. Congratulations, Brian. Thank you. So the next item, 4.3 on the agenda, it's hard to see here, isn't it?
like,
The 2019
That would be a
schedule.
good idea.
Oh, that's fine. The 2019 schedule, and there's a recommendation that the executive committee meet on the following dates in 2019. And Jen, what would that be?
I think that the usual
Yeah, the minutes.
secretary wanted to encourage us to book the dates ahead of time.
Can I suggest,
Do we have a list of them?
we poll, we'll ask Steph to poll the committee as to available dates, and then we can maybe ratify that by email. rather
Starting
than-
with the chair.
Yeah, and rather
Sure.
than trying to spend some time here, especially if we're missing members.
And tell them to leave Tuesday mornings off.
Okay, and Fridays.
Do we want that in a resolution, or is that just?
No, I think
just formal
Action
action?
item like today's now.
So if you just leave it like that we will set the dates later on.
Yeah.
I think we did that last year. We had a general framework and then we adjusted them
Yeah.
accordingly, so I think that's a good idea.
Yeah, and it's got to start with you, so you know what your schedule is.
Okay, thank you.
And then Brian's.
Councillor Morris. Okay, so, that'll
And not
go to,
Thursday mornings either.
Sophie and I will sort of work on that.
Yeah.
Right, Sophie?
Pardon me?
You and I will work on that.
Or Steph.
I'm
Or Steph.
filling in for Steph today. but
Steph and I will work
yeah,
on
should
that.
be in contact.
Okay, all right, good. Okay, item number 5 is review of action item from the September 25th meeting. We looked a little bit at the minutes of that meeting earlier when we were approving them. Jen, would you like to go through those action items and
Yeah, sure.
give us an update, please?
Okay, so coordinate with the new BIM building inspector regarding encouraging residents to ensure secondary sources of not just heat. I think we also talked about water, alternative energy, etc. So I did contact and spoke with Greg last year about this, and I think it's just remained on the action items because one of the suggestions was that this information go in the permit application document that we have online, but my understanding is that that document is in need of an update. So I was hoping that at that time I could sneak in the information that we're hoping to add.
Yeah, though a building permit has got to fit the building code. I mean, maybe it's got to be a handout that's given to everybody when they apply for their building permit.
Like a pamphlet?
Yeah, or, while you're building your house, think about the following. And, because they'd have to put the wood stove and stuff in their building permit application.
Yeah, they used to hand
Their
that
plans.
out
Yeah.
from the building department, just about secondary heat source.
So,
Would it be helpful to have it as a motion so that it's captured somewhere? Or,
sure, so I'll obviously have to work with the communications coordinator to develop that material.
And the building inspector.
So we want to have a motion that's to work out a communication strategy and material
Yeah.
to give the building inspector and
So I
Sophie?
would move, what's your title, Jen?
Emergency program coordinator.
The emergency program coordinator work with the building inspector and the communications coordinator to develop an information piece with respect to secondary sources of heat, water
Whatever those other
supplies,
things you said.
Water and energy.
other
Water and energy.
water and
Okay,
energy,
and that communications piece. Yeah.
to distribute when people are applying for their
To
building.
develop a communications piece.
To work with the building, the emergency management coordinator, work with the building inspector, and you, to develop a information sheet for distribution to people when they are considering building or renovating.
And then we can remove that from the action items?
Well, and then it becomes
Yeah, exactly.
an actionable resolution.
is there a seconder for that motion?
just a second, I want to make sure that it says heat, energy, and
Water?
water.
I thought it was energy and water sources, or you want heat?
Well, I think that was the initial idea.
Yeah,
was with
the initial idea is heat.
So
Yeah.
I think we should.
Heat,
roll all
energy, and
Yeah.
water. Is that correct?
Yeah.
That's fine.
You got that, Sophie?
Yeah.
Great,
So-
I'll second.
Okay.
Can we read it?
Sorry, there's a lot of
I lost the.
The emergency program coordinator worked with the building inspector and communications coordinator to develop an information piece regarding heat, energy, and water sources for distribution to individuals when they're considering building and renovating. Does that work?
Yeah.
Is that good? Okay, all those in favour? Any opposed? Motion is carried. Thank Jen?
Okay, number 2 is actually an agenda item today, so I'll just discuss that at this time, but it can be removed from the action items.
Okay.
Number 3 is related, I'll discuss that when it appears on the agenda. Number 4 was done, completed quite some time ago now.
Okay.
So that's to fix easy accessibility on the.
That's right,
Yeah.
on the front page of the website, there's now a block for the emergency program. Okay, actionable resolutions. So I've written a couple articles for the undercurrent, hopefully you all saw those.
Yeah.
So I would call that complete for now.
I guess I was curious because it doesn't say, it just says write an article.
Yeah, it wasn't,
Articles on emergency planning?
I think, I can't
We
even,
left it up to the discretion. She's got a lot of things to do.
But it was emergency planning.
I think we were trying to increase the visibility of the emergency program.
Okay, so can those articles get put onto the website under emergency planning so that people can read them?
Good idea.
Because,
Just post the links.
yeah,
Yeah.
and I'm now on the homepage of the web, there we go, emergency program.
Yeah, onto the website.
Nothing happens when I hit it, mind you.
So that's a new action item?
Yes.
Just to post that.
Okay.
Post a link to your articles.
Sure.
Links to articles like that. It's great.
Okay.
That's good.
Actionable resolution number 2, I think, is now on hold, pending some staff changes.
Okay.
And then number 1 under September 25th, that was done by email, to my recollection, and the guide is now printed, so any future revisions, let me know about.
Can I suggest, this was never actually presented to council at a council meeting.
Oh, that's a good point.
So people, to the extent that they're watching the council meeting and sort of get some credit for it. I assume you put it in the island page. Yeah.
We actually, sorry, I'm stepping out of my minute taker role here for a second. But we have a whole plan to do a launch of the emergency guide during emergency preparedness week in May.
Okay, super.
So we can schedule that.
So schedule something for a council meeting.
Yeah,
then.
yeah, I think
Yeah,
that's a
so
great
it
idea.
gets on the.
So,
I also suggest that we introduce new council members to this document.
yeah.
Oh, yes.
Because I lost mine because one of the new councillors kind of said, oh, I need that. And it went off. So Jen printed me another one this morning, but I think everybody should be reminded about it. Useful.
How do we capture that in the minutes of?
I have action items for that, so I have from this discussion, I have post emergency program undercurrent articles on website, present emergency guide at council meeting in May, and introduce new councillors to HRBA.
At the same time.
Yeah.
I think you.
Oh, okay.
Well, if it's emergency preparedness week, you might want to be a delegation and actually do a little bit of a show and tell of everything.
Sure.
To raise awareness.
Because we've got two new council members who are interested in the whole emergency and fire and, preparedness kind of side of things. And I can't remember who I gave who got my copy. And, but I might bring a couple extra copies.
Sure.
I did circulate electronically for council online and a copy of that as well, so we do have electronic copies too. We might just want to send out to all the council and just so they.
And it's on the website, publicly available for anyone who wants to
Okay.
read it.
Great.
So those are captured with action items. And
Yeah.
so we got that.
Okay.
Anything else, Jen?
No, thank you. Or is there another page? No. That's all.
All right. So that completes action 5.1. Item 6, the business arising from the minutes update. An EPC recommendation for council.
Oh, those are good.
So that's page 10.
Page 10.
Okay, so, do you mind if I?
Please go. Please, that's the intent.
So regarding resolution
Lead
number
on.
18-428, that was not done, actually. I circulated to the group via email the reasons why we were discouraged from applying for the funding to update our community wildfire protection plan this year. It was suggested that we do it next year instead because of changes that are being made currently to the criteria for those plans. And that was a recommendation straight from BC Wildfire Service, so I took it.
Yeah.
And we applied for different activities. So we still applied for the funding, just not for the CWPP, and the recommendation to this group is that that's done next year.
Do we want to capture that as a carry forward and just do it now, so we don't have to pass a resolution later?
I don't know that I ever needed a resolution to apply for grant funding from this group anyway. It's not necessary from my point of view, but if
Okay.
you'd like to.
No, I was just wondering how we got it on your to-do
Yeah.
list.
You just keep a list of grants that you're applying for, and you keep active and talk to CAO about it as you go along.
Yeah,
Is that how
Oh,
you,
yeah.
exactly.
kind of how you do it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
I
Why don't we
do
just
need
leave it
council's
like that?
approval, and I would ask for that. as
Okay,
it's-
until it comes to council.
But usually a council, if there's a committee, would say, has the committee supported
Mhm.
this?
And I think that might have been part of why this was
Yeah.
passed, yeah.
So you will work with Kathy to go through the list and then bring them to the committee and then on the council.
Sure.
Is that,
I
is
think
that
that
okay?
sounds good. We may have to do some of that depending on time constraints with grants, where we can circulate to the committee and get approval by email.
Well, that's why I was suggesting we just do it now, that the committee supports the application for next year for the wildfire.
Well, but we may run into the same issues that Jen ran into this past year. They may not be ready. So I would suggest we can.
I think as long as we don't forget it.
Yeah,
We-
well, I don't
we just
think
need to
we'll
make
forget.
sure
Yeah,
it's,
That was all I was wanting to make sure.
yeah,
that
it's
we
really
didn't
one
forget
order
it.
after us, isn't it?
It's on all our
Okay.
lines.
And I actually can't speak to 429. I don't know anything about it. Sorry.
Yeah, I don't know.
Well, it was done,
Was it?
wasn't it?
I don't know.
Oh,
Well,
no, it wasn't.
yeah, so this is something, Sophie, if we can check with Hope and we'll check with Public Works, see about the status, and we can let the committee know by email what the outcome of that was.
Okay.
I remember it was back in council meeting.
I just don't know if it's been carried out or not.
Might be part of the budget.
What about,
Okay, good. So that's item 6.1. Thank you, Jen. Item 7,
Jen's on for the rest of the afternoon.
update.
So item 7.1 was included, I think, as a way to facilitate more information about the fire halls being built. That information getting to this committee, refreshing if my memory's on. So work continues. Does anyone have any specific questions about the emergency operations portion of the new fire hall that I can answer? I'm not really sure what information to share here.
Can I just ask you a general question? Are you feeling comfortable that the requirements of the EOC, that as far from your point of view, are being incorporated into the fire hall plan?
I am, yeah. The architects have obviously a wealth of knowledge, having built multiple other EOCs. But there are also quite a few communities in Metro Vancouver building purpose-built EOCs right now. So I've been speaking to colleagues in other communities that are going through the same process. And then, of course, every community has one. So yeah, I'm confident.
Good, okay. Well, I think that's important.
Can we just throw that in the minute? Is that sort of, is that too much detail?
I think it's too much detail. We're trying to move away from detail-oriented minutes. So
Yeah.
I think we all feel
Okay, so then
Jen's.
the minutes will just say that she updated us on the status of the
That's
EOC.
right, yeah.
Thank you.
And is pleased with the progress.
Yeah, there we go. That's
And you'll let us know if there's any other issues that
Of course.
you're concerned about.
Sure, yeah.
Take them up with Kathy.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, item 7.2, emergency program coordinator update. That's this
that's
table
the
that we're
spreadsheet.
referring to,
Yeah.
on page 11.
So I'll just go through this, but please interrupt me as I do with questions or concerns. So the emergency support services program continues to develop. There's been lots of training offered. You can see a list of courses. I also have all the training that we've offered since program inception in 2017. So if anyone's interested in that list, I'm happy to share it. But ESS specific, you can see there have been about 4 courses offered in the last 4 or 5 months. We had a appreciation dinner in December for the volunteers. We had a drill that was successful in February. We've been updating.
What was the drill on?
It was on the documentation portion of the reception center.
Oh,
Yeah, it was thrilling.
That's great.
It was really
No,
good.
because it's so important.
Oh yeah, and we're doing another small reception center exercise at the Legion the month after next, so in May. And then resource acquisition continues, so that's a fairly important piece of the ESS puzzle, so I'm glad that's happening. And then we're looking at preparing for an exercise late this year, so a full-scale ESS exercise, operational exercise. The AED program continues. Rotary's been quite active actually in placing new AEDs lately. And a network of volunteers continue to manage the maintenance on those. So the grants, yeah, this is an accurate reflection of the grants received to date. As I've noted in the table, that it really dominates my time right now. So we have 1 that's fully completed, no other applications pending, and 5 grants that are currently in progress. Public and community outreach continues. So this dates back as far as October because I guess we haven't met since then, but lots of different presentations and work with the public on encouraging them to be as prepared as possible. The extreme weather response shelter was operational for about 18 nights, and we provided support in various forms.
And that was at the Little Red Church.
At the Little Red Church, yeah, and it has since closed down due to lack of uptake. My understanding was that nobody ever stayed there.
Yeah.
Nobody ever stayed there. It was, we set it up, but
Nobody came.
needed to come.
Right. So it seems that our homeless situation has changed since we began that project a couple years ago.
Sorry, Jen,
Yeah, sorry.
through the chair. What does that mean for the future, for future years?
Well, Lookout Society, so the nonprofit that was operating the facility, the shelter, has indicated that they'd like to continue to perform outreach on the island through the spring and summer, trying to connect with some of these vulnerable populations that are potentially at risk of homelessness, even if not absolutely homeless at this time. So that's good. They want to sort of build those relationships that might help encourage people to come in for the cold when they are at risk. And they'll just continue to monitor the situation. If we do at some point have a homelessness issue again in future, it would be easier for them to set up this time if there's a need.
My fear is that this past year was maybe just an off year.
Yeah. For, individual cases too, if there's one person who's at risk of freezing essentially on a really cold night, the RCMP does have the option of taking them to a shelter in town.
Did they do that?
Under the Assistance to Shelter Act, they didn't have to. So, to my knowledge, I shouldn't speak for the RCMP, I don't believe so. So there are options or alternatives, even though obviously not appealing to take a resident off the island, leaving them in town, potentially unable to return, but at least, that option
In a dire
exists.
circumstance.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, this is a good kind of problem to have.
Isn't it?
But I agree about, through the chair, about, it's great that things are still ticking over so that in future years, the relationships that we've built are still in place and that things could be spooled up again.
And on that note, I put Lookout in touch with Birch Housing because there's the potential that Birch's facility can incorporate the needs of an extreme weather response shelter in what they were already doing. So they're connecting regarding that possibility as well.
Great. Thank you.
And what about in our future healthcare center as well? Something to consider.
It's not something I've seen in any of the
No.
ones I've visited.
Nor have I, and I can see reasons like, anyway.
Yeah.
I'm not sure.
Yeah.
Sorry, that was just a throw.
Didn't they just do that up in,
They opened up something
at a hospital?
At a hospital.
I think Was it Tofino or something?
Tofino.
In
Yeah.
Tofino, it was on the news the
Yeah.
other day, yeah. That's because they didn't have any space
Anywhere else?
anywhere else.
Interesting.
They were using the emergency ward,
Creative solutions.
but it was a hospital, so they
Yeah.
had,
Pretty small hospital.
yeah, I haven't been there.
17.
I've been
Yeah,
to that.
17, yeah.
So, yeah, I mean, obviously if the issue of homelessness during the winter comes up again, I think we're better positioned to deal with it in
Yeah.
future.
Yeah.
But
And the church would be willing to
I
provide
can't
the
speak
space in
for the
future.
church, I'm not sure.
You don't know,
I
yeah.
hope so.
So does that just tracks along until this time next year?
They won't
Until-
reactivate it next year unless there's some sort of proven need. They're not gonna automatically do it again next year because there was just no uptake.
So when was the homelessness count done?
2 years, not this past year, for some reason they didn't contact us this year, but it was done the
Oh,
year
okay.
before.
So we didn't
maybe 2
get
years.
one done in the last cycle then?
No.
Okay.
No, and our last homeless count, when Metro Vancouver did it, focused on liveaboards.
So the only question there would be how long it would take to get it up and running if the need were to arise?
It wouldn't be
Is it that
instant.
way? Pardon?
It wouldn't be instant.
It would not be?
And I can't really speep to that because it's another group that's
Another group
operating the
that's doing it.
shelter. We just help to facilitate it. So it would depend on them and their staffing and I don't know. And BC Housing would have to approve the budget again, which you would need, again, not to speak for BC Housing, but presumably you need to show a need for them to approve the budget again.
Yeah.
Okay.
So my question is, when will the next homeless count take place, and is that the only way to identify need?
The next, I think this homeless count just took place, or it's about to take place, and I have reached out but haven't heard anything back. I actually think it took place early March. So and they do it on an annual basis.
Oh, okay, yeah. So we just listed it,
Yeah.
but we had a homeless shelter open until
So
2
should
days
we,
before.
should we be asking our GVRD director to ensure that we get included
I
in
think
the
that would,
homeless
I think
count?
that would be a great idea.
Do we need a motion?
I think that would be good.
So I move that the committee recommends to council that council request our GVRD director to ensure that Bowen Island is included in the annual homeless count.
I'll second that.
Did I say it slow enough, Sophie?
Our Metro Vancouver director to
Ensure
ensure
that that Bowen Island is included in the annual homelessness count.
Okay, that's a good motion. All those in favour? Any opposed? Carried. Any other questions related to that part of what Jen has presented? No? You want to go ahead?
Sure. So training and development since October refers to other staff members, not myself. So the Emergency Support Services Director and an alternate attended the ESS Directors Conference on Vancouver Island. Found it very valuable. That was grant funded, so I've applied for them to go again this year with the grant funding. Our fire chief and I got our local Fire Smart representative certification, and that's important for some of the work we're hoping to do through the next Fire Smart grant. It actually will allow, assuming we get the funding, for us to provide rebates to homeowners who undertake activities on their private land. So we can actually pay them for a portion of the work that they undertake. It's very small amounts, but still hopefully an incentive. And so in order for us to qualify to receive that funding, we need to have certified local Fire Smart representatives to do the assessments. So there are now 3 of us actually on staff who have that certification.
Who's the third, Jen?
Bruce Steele.
Oh,
Yeah.
Congratulations.
Bruce,
So
good for you.
there was media relations training undertaken by new council, or the new council and staff members. We sent a staff member to the Emergency Planning and Business Continuity Conference. I had actually signed up myself but couldn't go because I was deployed to Dawson Creek and I couldn't get it refunded, so we sent somebody else. The EOC team met again in November and I demoed the public notification system to them. Talked about a disaster debris management plan update that is currently being undertaken. Gave them the update on the evacuation plan, the communications plan. Talked about Fire Smart, and we worked through a very small wildfire scenario. And that team is eager to meet again and train and continue to exercise. And then we offered rapid damage assessment training to staff in the community in January, which was really well attended. That was a full class of
Oh, I
30.
heard about that. You tried to fit them all in here.
Yeah, it was crowded. I look forward to the new fire hall. So that was quite successful. Again, that group was quite keen to push that program forward and find out what more they could do, which is great. Bowen's administration, so we had 1,165 residents registered. I'll keep reiterating that that is really high compared to other communities. The highest number I ever heard was 20% of residents enrolled. And that was after a major public communications plan, over multiple years. So I think we're doing quite well because
Is that about 30%?
we're over 30% of our adult population. So I looked at, we have about 3,000 people who are over 14 years of age, which is what I would consider like cell phone age. So yeah, over a third of our adult residents are registered. So we continue to promote the system. I'm not done, but it's a good start. We tested it the week of Shakeout and did some post-test work to clean up some of the bits and pieces that didn't function the way we expected them to. I would love to have more time to clean up the system. I have a list of things I'd like to do if the time ever presents itself. You can see I put maybe next year. And then we actually had quite a few enrollees after we used the system for the first time when the tree went down over Miller Road. That was really good at really effective at getting additional people to sign up.
Mr. Chair?
That worked well. Yes.
I just have a question there. I'm wondering, I'm realizing that I should check my emergency Bowens because I got a new phone. And during the May emergency event, maybe that's one of the things we could suggest to everybody is they go and update their contact info because it all changes all the time. I mean,
As long as you don't change your phone number, I assume it just flows through to the new phone.
Right, if you have the same number.
And-
Although you would probably have to, potentially if you change carriers, you could have to opt in again for text message receipt.
yeah.
Well, that's if you
Because
don't.
you could keep the number and change from Telus to Bell. Anyway,
Yeah.
yeah, it's
Anyway,
probably worth looking at
It's
once
just,
a year.
just one of the things that you might suggest to the population.
Could we add that as an action
Yeah,
item?
it's a good idea.
The communications coordinator is working on a campaign for the entire emergency preparedness week, so I'm
Yeah,
sure we can
That's what I
add
thought, it's
that
just-
to that.
if you think it's useful.
Yeah,
but,
that's great.
We're also planning public outreach during that week, which will, as usual, include signing people up for the system.
How many people opted to have you sign them up rather than sign themselves up? I know there was a couple when I was on the thing.
I've really never encountered anyone who said, no, don't sign me up.
No, but I mean versus asking you to contact them to get them signed up versus actually just going and doing it directly.
Well, it's hard to know if they actually go do it directly themselves after those conversations, so.
Yeah,
Some of them
okay.
have daughters that have to sign up.
Well, they wanted to be contacted.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's
We're
good.
meant to do
Yeah.
that in my older neighborhood.
I think I had a call from you, Jen, and I signed up. And you said,
That's
I don't see your name here, Bill. What's going on? I said, what?
I think
So?
you signed me up.
That was a good job.
Kept trying, it didn't work.
But yeah, you could see how time consuming
Yeah.
that could be if
Oh,
you
yeah.
let it.
Yeah.
The BC Ambulance Service Night Landings project, I think probably Ian is better prepared to speak to, hopefully, but from what I understand, we just need to pave the site and then it's ready to go.
I think we have to have an agreement in place with the landowner, because we're gonna be putting about $15,000 into paving and lighting for it. So without an agreement, they could just come and take it away at any time.
Okay.
So I think we're working on that now. I think Jen has been in touch with the municipal lawyer to find out the best route to go.
Is it public knowledge yet as to where that is?
Where the site is?
Uh-huh.
Yeah, it's down at the golf course below the clubhouse.
Oh,
Where
okay.
we cleared the land.
Where the trailer
Where
was.
the trailer was, okay.
Yeah, where the trailer was, helijets come over, landed, checked out the site, done
Good.
a flyover to check it out, and they're quite happy with it, they just need paving.
We were originally hoping it could go on our land, the Sewell
Yep.
site, but I think they determined that
Yeah.
It's too difficult.
We came quite close to getting it at Veterans Park, actually, but no, Helijet said no.
It's more of a drop-in site than a.
There were a bunch of
Yeah.
concerns.
Just out of curiosity, what kind of, having been out at Whistler last week, do they use the same helicopter that goes up to, that BC Ambulance had at
Yeah.
Whistler?
Yeah.
Because that one up there said BC Ambulance Service all over it, it didn't say anything to do with Helijet. So I didn't
Helijet's
know.
the contractor, as you know,
Yeah,
and they
BC
they
Ambulance.
make the final
yeah.
call.
but BC Ambulance doesn't have any of their own helicopters?
No, they.
Okay, so it's the
use them all
same
for Helijet,
type,
yeah.
okay, that was more the question, because
Yeah.
there was nothing on this helicopter that was sitting on the pad up there to identify it as other than a
Oh,
BC
I see.
Ambulance
Yeah,
Service
yeah, that's the
helicopter.
exact same as here,
Okay,
when they do come
okay.
here, yeah.
Okay.
Mr. Chair, if I could just actually express my outrage that this is going to be costing the municipality $10,000 to $15,000 to put this in, and that it's not the province who's paying for the site. And I think, Jen, your conversation with the provinces, could you just reiterate what they said about the water taxi?
Oh, my understanding from BC Ambulance was, I guess in response to us saying or feeling that it was unacceptable that we didn't have night landings, the response that I think verbally received was that there is a way of transporting patients off island at night via water taxi, and that's acceptable to them. It's not their responsibility to ensure that we get our night landings reinstated, essentially. It's up to the community to do.
How do we feel about that? You expressed an opinion there? What?
Do we want to make a motion that council,
I'm wondering about that.
recommend that council advocate for better service from BC Ambulance in terms of night landings or something like that? Because we, you know, as elected councillors, we do go to UBCM or the mayor could write a letter or whatever, but that would also be a way to bring the situation to council, that these costs are being incurred that we thought BC Ambulance was going to.
I don't think we've ever been under the impression that the ambulance service was going to pay for it, because they told us that at UBCM.
I know, but it's a
Yeah.
fundamental issue. If we're an island, we're a little bit different than the mainland in getting people to emergencies. And
Our marine highway is closed at night.
We've made progress in this area before. I don't think it's worth not doing. I'm thinking about when they first told us that we needed to hire a heliport consultant. That was entirely at our cost. And after numerous months of banging at the door, finally they decided that Helijet and BCAS would cost share the cost of a consultant for the 21 odd communities that were in the same position as us. And we didn't have to pay for a consultant. So I think if enough communities are saying the same thing, we do make progress. Probably wouldn't hurt to mention.
Councillor Morris, do you have a comment?
I was just wondering, like Maine has a heli jet landing pad, but it's on grass. And Gabriola's is on a big grass field, so nobody else is.
Aliander is on grass.
And Galliano's, yeah, so,
They will land on grass here.
yeah,
They were
so
quite
the
happy
cost
with
at
that.
this point is us having to pave it.
Yeah.
But if
What?
we waited a year, we could grow in grass.
Yeah, or
Yeah.
pay for sod and it'd be done a lot quicker than
Yeah, but the
seed.
sod would still have to,
Yeah.
Lift.
yeah.
It would have to be watered and cared for if it was sod.
would be delayed.
Yeah, I mean, if
Yeah.
we could wait a year, grow in some
Yeah.
grass or get some
Save
sod
money.
properly seeded. So the question more is
Could we,
timeframe.
I'm not sure of why paving is required. Could,
If paving was required just because of the time factor, we could do it in, we got the grant, or got the money from Ms. Pally or whoever, it could be done within a couple of weeks. So it was the
I
time.
asked the
And you
same
can't land
question.
on the gravel just goes everywhere.
Yeah, I asked that very
Compact.
question, why we couldn't leave the ground bare, and that was the reason, was the gravel would go flying when the helicopter
Yeah, I think that makes
Haven't
sense.
been there.
because having bringing in helicopters to remote mountain places where there's never any paving, I wondered about drain rock or something, some bigger ground.
BC Ambulance has a document called Building a Heliport for Your Community. I've shared it with this committee
Okay.
previously. It lists 4 things that the ground can be made of. It's steel, concrete, asphalt, or compacted turf. That's exactly the wording. So I think compacted turf is what we need to focus on.
So we need,
If we're looking for alternates to paving.
our $10,000 is to pave it.
15.
15,000.
10 to 15.
Wow.
We've got 15 in the capital
I
budget.
have a question. I like Kathy's suggestion here, but what about artificial turf? Because we're gonna have, for one thing, maybe a whole bunch of used artificial turf, but even so, a small, because I see this as a temporary.
Mhm. Could very well end up being
Right,
temporary.
depending on what the agreement is, if this is a temporary facility and above that slope where there's drainage issues already, I don't know about paving, I know that the area
Well, that area never gets wet.
It
Other
could
than
just
rain.
add to runoff issues for the park below, and all that,
My concern is investing $10,000 to $15,000 in paving, and then the property is rezoned and subdivided, and I think that is a legitimate concern.
But artificial turf is not.
If the agreement is
So
for a
it's
very
not
short
cheap.
term, like a 1-year lease or something, or,
I'm not sure, we haven't worked out the
so let's
term
just
yet.
say theoretically it might be a short-term lease,
Yeah.
then it might not be a cost advantage to do it,
Yeah.
pave it.
Right.
Yeah.
Considering it's a night landing site, are they also requiring lighting?
Yes.
Well, no, what they were requiring was as we've got our night lights, so instead of putting those down, we would have like cat's eyes in place in the concrete, so the only
Reflectors.
lighting they would require would be from truck lighting, that when we're on scene, we light up that way. So they don't need permanent lights down there.
Okay.
So if we waited a year, we could grow in some sod, some grass, that would then be the compacted, whatever they called it in the thing, like they've got
Yeah,
in Maine and Gannano and so
yeah.
forth. Or we do it right now and we pave it.
Well,
Use
my
the
my
option.
personal concern is, it's been 2 years since we've needed it. I think now we're starting to gamble a little bit. We used it the other day. We're lucky it was a daytime night landing when that man fell off at Eagle Cliff, so we had to fly him out.
Oh, I didn't know anybody did.
Yeah, so it was only 3 days ago. So I think the longer we're pushing it, we're starting to gamble, I think.
So that's why I heard all the helicopters on Tuesday.
Yeah.
Is artificial turf something you can just lay out and hammer down? Not to get into the weeds. but
No, I think it has to go on like a proper base, and it's,
it can't be anything that's going to lift
Lift
with
when
the
the,
wind.
yeah, when the
So
wind comes
we
in.
can't
so.
just.
yeah, I think,
Is there different
think at
levels
this
of
point-
paving thickness, so we can just do a skin coat versus that?
Well, it's-
well, the recommendation is 4 inches. You could be driving an ambulance up on it also.
Yeah.
So you wouldn't want to do something and next thing it cracks.
That's the
You've
point,
got
it's heavy
pieces
stuff.
flying around
yeah.
the air again.
it's 4 inches from the ambulance authority.
Well, it's in the
No,
capital
it's
plan.
just road, that's road allowance. That's what they recommend, 4 inches
Okay.
for.
So it's in the capital plan, and the budget was given first, second, and third reading the other night, so.
So
nobody said anything.
we support that, but we're dismayed that we're not getting any. Kathy, I'd like to come back to your
Yeah.
issue of concern that you want to maybe express through to the council. and
Yeah,
so
I think
forth.
there should be some advocacy, and to reiterate what Jen said as well, the more communities are together, and especially small communities of our nature, where $15,000 is quite a bit of money.
Okay,
Yeah.
so this has come up at UBCM before, I think at the Small Communities Forum, which is a place to bring it up
Yeah.
as an issue, and do you know who the 21 other communities were that were affected besides us? Some of them. 'Cause we could do some letter writing
Yeah.
to those people.
Do you want to put forward some motion
Yeah, maybe that.
to
I
council?
don't know if you caught the one I did.
Yeah, so I have so far that council advocate for better service from BC Ambulance Service in terms of night landing service.
Maybe just leave it as open as that? Would that be
Well, it's not better service, it's better cost
better
sharing.
funding?
Yeah, cost sharing, partnering.
Yeah.
Partner,
Yeah.
cost sharing.
Cost sharing.
Cost sharing?
Cost sharing /
Okay.
partnership,
Because
or
they're
just
like,
cost sharing?
Cost sharing, yeah.
Do you want to read out what you have, Sophie?
So the council advocate for better cost sharing from BCN rail service in terms of night landing service.
Thank you.
So at the beginning, it would say that EPEC recommended
EPEC, right?
Yes,
to council.
Yeah.
Is there a
I move that.
seconder? All those in favour? Motion carried.
Thank you.
Jen, next item on your list.
Emergency management plan updated. This may look familiar to you because it hasn't changed much since last time I presented to this committee. I'm sorry that it's taking so long, but unfortunately, other things have become a priority.
If I could just underscore
Mainly the
that,
grants.
Jen has been incredible in the amount of grants we've received in the last year. But what that means is she has to focus her work on the grant criteria and the grant work and fulfilling those, so other things fall down a bit, understandably so.
And I think winning all those grants there earlier at item number 3 there, sort of kind of backs that up.
oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Quite frankly, that's more important to get that money in so that we can
Absolutely.
do these things.
Yeah.
That's right.
I just had a question. I'm wondering how many hours a week you're working now?
My average right now is 22 hours per week.
Okay.
It's fairly variable. Some weeks I'm here full-time and then I'm about to go to Europe for 3, so.
Right.
But the average is 22.
Are you
per
taking
week
us
right
all
now.
with you?
Thank
Yes,
you.
please join me.
Thank you. I'm good. That's great.
Okay.
So, being new to this committee, it says gap analysis complete. Is that something that's been shared with the committee in the past?
Yeah, would you like a copy?
And so I guess I need that in the first draft if it's, or is it just the gap analysis?
There's no first draft.
Okay,
Not
thank
ready
you.
yet.
Anybody else require that? But I think just maybe just Alison. Okay.
Okay, crisis communication plan, it's got really close to being completed. I would like to just add a few more things to it, incorporate some ideas that have been raised since I presented the draft to the management committee, but it's just simply deferred indefinitely right now. We have a crisis communications plan that's far better than what we used to have. It's enough to work with. It's a good start. And as time allows in future years, I think it should be updated probably pretty regularly, but it just hasn't been finalized and it's not a priority right now.
Does everybody know what that is?
Crisis communications plan, it's for staff primarily, so for your information officer in an emergency operations center to be able to effectively communicate, you know, internally and externally.
Got it.
Yeah, and it's got a lot of like tools, you know, templates, and have you considered this, and have you
Oh, I know
contacted
the one
these
you're talking
people, and
Yeah.
So I need that too then, I guess.
Sure.
The,
Should have had an orientation.
so that's deferred for the moment. The
Yeah.
disaster debris management addendum.
So the disaster debris management plan is one of the reasons these other things are getting deferred. This is a directive that came from the REAC, Regional Administrators Advisory
Engineers.
Committee.
Yeah.
Kathy, am I getting that right? So the people in Kathy's
So,
position.
REAC is the engineering.
Engineers.
Oh,
But it was actually, so REAC did the work, but RAC
yeah.
commanded, that's not the right
Yeah.
word. But
So
it
effectively it
No,
was.
it's good.
instructed member municipalities of Metro Vancouver to create their own disaster debris management plans by April of this year.
And disaster debris means,
Debris over and above what you would usually be able to process. So we manage garbage on a regular basis. This would be post-earthquake or, you know, maybe a very
So,
significant
fallen
wind
down
event,
house, a whole bunch of dead
Yeah.
trees. or
multiple fallen
trees,
houses,
yeah.
etc.
Rocks.
So there's a Metro Vancouver plan that's already in existence, and member municipalities, like I said, have been instructed to come up with their own plans. Quite a few municipalities are doing that in sectors. So we've joined with North Shore Emergency Management and Lions Bay to do a North Shore sector plan. So we're working with North Van, West Van, and the other North Van. And that should actually be ready by the end of April to give to IPREM. And I've thankfully had the support of staff who I need the input of, like from planning and public works and the environment department to do that work with me. So it's nearing completion.
Good.
emergency guide for residents. You all have one in front of you on your table. It's published, it's at Municipal Hall, it's at the library. It's going to be published in the gold pages, and as you heard
Oh,
earlier,
good.
yeah, we're rolling it out in May as part of a larger public communications campaign. Professional development, it's just for your own information. Like I said earlier, got that certificate. I skipped the conference. I've attended recently a workshop on marine transportation post-earthquake,
Oh, cool.
which was very interesting. I joined the BC Association of Emergency Managers. I've completed a certificate in emergency management through the JI, and I just started a new one actually in emergency management exercise design.
So the workshop on marine transportation, was that how to get people on and off the island, or?
Oh, it was actually for like the whole south coast, so they weren't particularly
Okay.
focused on Bowen Island
Oh, no, I-
specifically.
Okay.
And it was the movement of people, goods, resources.
Okay.
Was there anything in there that affects us?
It's just in the planning stage right now, so there's no, it's research-based as well, like it's a university
Okay.
that's sort of running the project.
BBC or
BBC. And it was informative. I don't know that I will go to every workshop. I'm not sure it's the best use of my time, but I'll continue to monitor what they're up to and what's coming out of them and provide input. I think I was able to provide the sort of rural lens or view and make some interesting connections with other people in similar situations.
Good.
Great.
And then our events and responses, so we sent a claim to EMBC for the flood event in late November.
And that was the culverts on the
Took out Miller Road and not Gardner Road?
The two big culverts there, right?
Yes. I haven't actually heard whether or not we were successful in getting reimbursed for that, so I continue to wait.
Well, that was November, this is only March.
Oh, I only submitted it in January,
Yeah.
end of January, so there's been no news is fine.
Is this the first time we've done this?
Correct, to my
So-
knowledge.
To my- your knowledge.
I mean, I'm good.
Well, I'm
I'm
just
just
part
So you're pioneering a process here.
Pardon?
You're pioneering a process here of getting us some reimbursement.
Yeah, I guess so. Although other communities have definitely done it before.
Okay, good.
But this is great. I think this is part of
It
the
is.
whole
Pretty key.
recent movement of the municipality towards getting more grants and getting more
Yeah,
resources flowing into the community, and that's another way.
I think that's excellent. Get whatever we can that we're
Oh, yes.
doing.
In this case, we applied retroactively for the task number, and EMBC does not
They
appreciate
don't usually
that.
like that.
So we can't do that again. If we need a task number, we have to ask for it in advance, trying to make that
Well,
clear.
how can you ask for it in advance if you don't know the
Ask for it
disaster?
before you incur the costs.
Ah,
So
okay.
as soon as you've got,
So as soon as we have a disaster, you ask for a task
Correct.
number.
And you know
So
the
we
process?
got away with it this time, but we need to do better next time. The wind event in late December, we activated the EOC for a short time to monitor the situation. That was when the ferries shut down or were canceled.
December 20th.
I can't, yes, I
December 20th.
remember when I
remember
wrote
it
this.
vividly too.
I do.
And we subsequently debriefed with the group of staff members who had been monitoring the situation just to see what we could have done better or differently and where the communication gaps were. So that was quite useful, and we've tried to close some of those loops subsequently. And then there was the road closure on Miller Road in early February. So that was the first time we got to test out the system. Of course, I was not at home with a laptop with, I think, 3% battery when I got the call from Ian at 2 in the morning. So I managed to send out a message with my computer before it died, and then did the rest on my cell phone. So that was a learning lesson for me.
Keep your computer plugged in.
Charger needs to come with you. And
Backup battery.
Yeah.
We get you one of those.
So- And I've since had a generator and a transfer switch installed at our house so that when the power goes out, I can just stay home.
Oh, that's good.
Yeah.
So with those wind incidents, and going back to the debris management.
Yeah.
Whose responsibility is it to clean up when a tree falls from private property across a road? Is it just a, I think that's a question I'm getting asked.
How is it dealt with, actually?
Yeah, I mean, I assume because it's blocked the road that somebody comes from the muni and cuts the tree up, but then, and moves it off, but then what happens to everything?
Well, that
else?
one was, it all depends what exactly happens, because that one took out hydro lines
Power
also.
line.
Yeah.
Yeah, so our muni guys weren't about to do it, the fire department was about to do it, so hydro came over and did it.
Yeah,
So depending on the situation, if it was just a tree across
but
the
then
road.
what happened to the tree? The piece that cut off and all the debris, did hydro?
No, all the little guys with chainsaws and axes showed up and
Yeah, it disappeared.
disappeared within an hour, yeah.
Okay, but I guess that's,
The people with wood stoves, it was still pretty cold.
Yeah,
yeah, but I guess that's the question, because there's a lot of branches and stuff now lying on sides of roads that are
Yeah.
gonna turn into fire hazards. So I
It's on the
guess,
side of the road, isn't it, our road?
well, I don't know, that's the question, because if the tree that caused the branches, et cetera,
You mean charging back a property owner if?
well, no, or telling the property owner it's their responsibility to clean it up because it was their tree. Like I remember hydro some years when a neighbor's tree fell over a friend's hydro line. They had to get permission from that neighbor who was away before the hydro could do anything with that tree. So that friend was without power for a week because hydro couldn't. So I think it's, hopefully that's something that's gonna get set out, clarified, because we're gonna have more of these wind events and more trees falling down just because of all the extreme.
It won't be clarified by the disaster debris
Okay.
management plan.
It's not
Just
done
to
yet.
be clear.
That's a big,
Okay.
It's just basically where do you take the debris and where do you store it and how do you get it off?
Well,
the
who's
island?
responsible and then where does the debris go and all that sort of stuff? And maybe that's something to
I
be
had a really
thought about
basic
through the fire
understanding.
squad.
I think-
If it was on private land, it was the owner's responsibility, and if it was on the road, it was ours, but I don't.
Yeah.
Sounds like we need another policy or a standard operating procedure, and it would be more based on public works.
Yeah, I guess I'm just thinking like, the tree's on private property and it falls onto a public road. Then do they just cut to the edge of the property line? And then do they take away the tree and the branches? Because the guys that come and cut it up for firewood don't take away the branches, they just heave them to the side of the road.
My question is this what is the need? And my question
The
is.
need is getting rid of firefighter fuel, fire fuel,
So you're
on
talking
the sides
about
of the roads, public safety.
wildfire prevention.
Yeah,
So maybe it could be in the upcoming wildfire prevention plan, if there is one. Right? But also, you also mentioned BC Hydro's ability to turn power back on for people. So that's sort of BC Hydro access, is that what it is?
well, that's a public safety, but that's a,
Because I'm not sure I'm hearing a strong need. You know, it's not like we have fires starting in the road right away.
well,
Very
we've had
often, or
lots
do
of fires in the road.
Kathy?
I would suggest maybe this is something we could refer to the management committee for discussion, because the
Yeah.
management committee includes public works representatives and
Yeah.
just for the next management committee meeting.
Did you capture that referral, Sophie?
So I think we need a resolution for that.
Okay,
So,
would somebody like to propose something?
Well, is it a it's a question, I guess, is
What's
what
it?
happens with the debris left from windfall that's along the sides of the public roads? Whose responsibility is it to deal with it? Is the, yeah,
So that the Emergency Program Executive Committee refer the question.
because it's a fire hazard.
Just refer it to staff instead of the management committee.
Yeah.
Just thinking like we have BC ambulance at that table and a bunch of volunteers, and even that committee might not.
Let's just
be
refer
the
the question to staff, and then if they need further direction, they can go to the management committee.
Okay,
So that's my motion, refer the question of tree debris removal for wildfire prevention after a storm event in the road right away to staff.
Yeah.
seconder?
Well, it isn't even after storm events, because sometimes they just fall over all by themselves.
It's ongoing all the
It
time,
is.
the
Yeah.
amount of debris. And that's the
Yeah.
big risk, and it is a risk on the public roads, because people smoking, flicking up cigarettes in
Yeah.
summertime.
I hear you. Take out the words after a storm event, and then, I'm still looking for a
Fallen
second.
trees, I guess.
For the question of
Second
tree
is by
debris
traffic.
removal from public roads.
Fallen tree debris removal.
Just leave it tree debris, because
Okay.
even if the tree doesn't fall, I'm still concerned with the tiny.
There's also those dead tiny things, yeah.
So this would, to me, would be something for both public works and fire, because it's also involves fire smart program as
Yeah.
well. So it's, yeah.
And I
Maybe
can-
we can specify
I
the
can see some
departments,
questions coming up in your next
public works,
session.
Yes.
fire, and emergency plan coordinator,
Yeah.
emergency program.
Okay, we have that motion. Sophie, do you want to please read it?
So refer the question of tree debris removal from public roads, wildfire prevention, to the public works, fire, and emergency program departments.
Okay, all those in favor? Against?
Did we have a second?
Sorry, I seconded
Oh,
it.
good.
Yes, yes, okay.
Good, thank you.
Any other questions rising out of that?
The one final thing I'll say about that road closure is it's worth having somebody managing these events. I contacted BC Hydro.
Nobody takes responsibility, is that what you're kind of telling me?
No.
Nobody knows whose responsibility
I
it
was
is?
just saying it's such a good thing I'm here. No, I phoned BC Hydro and talked to them about their priorities that morning, and their first port of call wasn't going to be to Miller Road, where we had hundreds of trapped residents, but to the first power outage that had been reported, which I think was like Cates Hill. And so through some of the secret contact information we have in our EOC documents, I was able to get to the right person and direct them to Miller Road first, because that is more important, frankly, than the people who have
There's other ways in and out. of Cape
correct.
Town.
Yeah, being out of power is not the same as not being able to leave your house
Get an ambulance, etc.
and get an ambulance or fire truck there. So, it's worth calling them to find out where they're going and try to reprioritize if we can. So,
Is that something that could be referred to the management committee to try to sort that out?
there's
Make
a-
sure that happens?
Yeah, I mean, just,
I don't know how you do it, but it's a kind of a
I
important
think we
thing.
should really tell the EOC team more than anything else.
Okay,
Okay, that could be an action item.
because it seems to me that the biggest problem was getting BC Hydro over here to turn off that power. Everything was on hold overnight, tree fell at 2 o'clock.
Yeah.
They had to wait till the ferry next morning to get over here,
And then the ferry wasn't
and
running.
the ferry wasn't running, so
Well,
we were already
Brian,
stuck.
he could probably talk about this, he does bring them over on the water
When
tax.
the power comes on at 3 in the morning, it's like being able to bring over hydrants.
Somebody would bring somebody over
Yeah.
to
And it's usually in the storm, and I've had hydro crew on the boat that said they would never come over by water taxi. That only happened once in 10 years. But yeah, no, they're very good to respond
good,
anytime.
good.
Do they keep a truck here on the island?
So there's a truck here, you just need somebody to come over to do it.
Getting the crew.
So we
Mind you,
need,
there's only, if it's poles down and everything, they don't have the equipment to do that.
Yeah.
It's just if there's something over the line and they actually can get the power back up in the majority of cases, but if it's major damage, there's no way.
Okay, good. Thank you, Ben. Jen, you look after the EOC communication on that,
Never mind.
Councillor
So
Fast?
it's a good point.
it was just, is there always a BC Hydro crew, truck on the island?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
A small one.
Yeah.
Yes.
You brought up a point there about, I guess it could be referred to as triage in a major storm event. I think it's pretty important that hydro, the fire department has the numbers for their central dispatch to be able to get information to them. They may be operating on just all the knowledge they have.
I
They-
said that to them, though. I said our fire chief passed this information along through dispatch, so. I know. Yeah, I certainly wasn't criticizing the fire department's work.
Okay,
Okay,
next time.
Jen, evacuation.
So as you probably already know, we have an RFP currently out, and it closes tomorrow, so I can't really comment on it at this stage,
Okay.
but a copy of the RFP is available on the website if you didn't catch it and want to see the details. And I'm hoping that we have flood of responses and are able to.
Did we get grant funding for that?
Correct.
Yeah.
Yeah, this is funded through the evacuation route planning grant.
So we'll follow up later.
Yeah.
We'll hear later.
Yeah,
Okay,
I guess so. Does anyone have any questions
No.
about the evacuation plan?
I think we'll just leave it until the
Yeah.
proposals come in and see where it goes.
Do you want to know the keen interest of CBC?
Oh, I did an interview with CBC actually. The RFP is up on BC Bid, and I got the impression that this particular reporter just searches BC Bid for stories. So they called, he emailed some questions, and I responded by email, and then he asked to do a phone interview, so I did. And he indicated that it would be published on CBC online, and that there may even be a radio portion on North by Northwest. But I haven't seen it yet, so if anyone sees it, let me know.
Okay. Great.
Excellent. Climate emergency, sorry, bad writing.
Oh,
Community
yeah.
emergency program.
This is,
We added
we added
7.4.
7.4,
Oh.
and I just wanted to flag with people that at Monday night's council meeting, council considered the students that had walked in the climate march the previous Friday. I didn't bring the paper, but it was on the cover of the previous undercurrent.
Yeah.
And a big group of Bowman students had marched from IPS and VIX to Municipal Hall, and the mayor had met them, and there had been they were demonstrating for climate action. And so you can read about it in the undercurrent, but council on Monday night referred the idea of whether we should declare a climate emergency and what actions might come out of that to the emergency, to the Environment and Climate Action Committee. And so we'll be getting some info back from that. But I just wanted to mention this climate emergency declaration is happening. We passed it at Islands Trust, and it's happening in
City
many
of
other.
Richmond did it this week.
Yeah, many other municipalities have passed this.
Richmond's kind of.
Anyway,
It is an emergency.
Partly because of things like we had happen in December, the two big culverts that have washed out, the broken public dock, you know, that the public wharf there, the third float is now separated. People can't go onto it because the piling broke and the crossbar, and you know, so municipal infrastructure being damaged. So I just, because this is the emergency program executive committee, I just wanted to mention this idea of a climate emergency is in council's resolutions from this week, and there may be, just keep an eye out for more climate emergency funding as well that may be coming available. And it also plays into the triage kind of side of things too, in that knowing or being able to, well, anyway, that was just sort of the, get the number early. And how do we track? I guess my question is, do we have a way, we can't really track whether things are due to climate, but are they increasing in time? And also in terms of marine spills, which is one of the things in our hazard and vulnerability assessment, this is the kind of, those kind of storms are the kind of things that affect shipping, and also the big thing that happened in December was styrofoam, so plastic pollution, but it could be any other kind of spill, right, from LNG to fuel from ships. And
can I
big
ask you a
fire
question?
happened at Marine,
Sorry.
at the, did we go Marina, I think it is? Anyway, one of those West Van marinas where they have a fuel barge, a fuel barge down in the yacht club there where you go by where the fire hall is in
Oh, okay,
West Van,
West Van,
and down where the bus goes.
yep.
And what happened was that the waves were all, things were breaking loose, so the guys were out there trying to secure the fuel lines, and instead of being able to tighten down the switches. Instead, it caught fire. So there was a fire down in the harbor with all those boats and things, in the big waves like this. And anyway, it's all okay. But there are just hazards and emergencies that happen as a result of storms and waves along the coastline that I just thought I would bring up at this. We'll find out more about it at the House Sound Forum, which is coming up in April. Because there are still community volunteers out there collecting up styrofoam from, well, that's the other thing that happened is floats and docks were washed out, marinas were wrecked, and all this wreckage is out there. I'm sure Brian's got to drive around it.
It's been going on for many, many years.
Yeah.
You know, 40 years ago, there was worse storms coming into Snucko than this last one.
Mm-hmm.
So it's an ongoing thing.
Right.
Whether or not it's the overall climate change or just vagaries in weather, it seems to come in cycles. And when it's calm, people put things in place that they think it's going to be like that all the time. And then the winter comes along, you get events like we've had.
Anyway, so it's just a matter of keeping our shorelines kind of more storm-proofed than less. People putting in new infrastructure. How do we ensure that it might be storm-proof? Anyway, just bringing that to everybody's attention.
So you keep us advised of
Yeah.
how this progresses through council, and
Yeah.
you chair that committee? Or you, I mean, you're on
No,
that
I'm
committee?
not actually on that committee.
Maureen and David.
Okay, so maybe they could let us,
Yeah.
just keep us
I'll watch it.
updated and see what's going on.
It'll probably come back to council.
It's very
so-
important, I think.
And Councillor Morse and I can, yeah.
Okay. So that's the end of the updates at 7.4. Jen, are you finished? You are, I think.
She's on again now for 8.1.
New business, 8.1.
Yeah, I was just giving Jen a break.
Yeah.
So
Go
the
ahead.
Community Emergency Program Review Self-Assessment Tool, I think everyone on this committee, with the exception of Alison, has seen before. So just for our new member, I wanted to show you that it exists and maybe suggest that it's something we should do again this year. We've gone through this process twice already. Once when the program very, very first started to sort of see where we were as a baseline. And then once again since then. I think the second time I did it myself and just sought sort of approval. This is where I think we are. I don't know if it's even, if this committee finds it valuable, but as a way of sort of assessing the program's development, it's a tool that already exists. Sophie, would you mind clicking on Internet Explorer? Just to quickly show you, it's very ugly. Sorry, province of BC. But it categorizes different areas of the emergency program and shows you what you should have at the very minimum and then what an enhanced program should have. So if you haven't seen it before, it might be worth looking at.
I clicked the link, it was fascinating because I thought, oh, here's a way that we can track whether we've missed anything big or
And track progress.
track progress, yeah.
I assume, do they ask for that when you're doing a grant application?
They do not ask for this. None of the grant applications have asked for this specifically, no. Not yet.
Well, that's what I'm thinking.
They might in future, but no, they don't.
Once they see programs up and running there. Yeah.
I'm kind of smiling because I did that when it first came out,
Yeah,
Oh, yeah.
and I forget when. I
yeah.
probably could find a copy of what I had, and I'm sure it would be light years difference.
Oh, it'll be interesting to compare.
It'd be interesting to compare the progress.
Yeah.
and
Well,
what has happened.
that would be fascinating.
Yeah.
Run across
No,
it.
it would actually be embarrassing.
Yeah.
So, you know, a lot of our direction right now, I sort of touched on this, but is coming from other places,
Mhm.
whether it's the grant applications or IPREM telling us we need to do disaster debris management planning, et cetera, et cetera. A lot of what we do is these external influences, but one day there won't be grant applications or we won't have these directives coming from the province or IPREM. The province is working towards a 2021 earthquake exercise, so that's influencing some of what we're doing. But yeah, this will help us in setting direction as well, not just seeing, you know, where we've come from, which is useful, but where should we be going? What of this do we want to do that we're not, or do we identify as important? So I just wanted to flag it for the committee and remind us that it's there. I don't personally think we should go through it right now.
No.
No,
Homework.
no, I was happy to see that you were using it, and that, you know, theoretically, any of us could have looked at it, it was on the agenda, so it's sort of an
Okay.
information item, and that we could, if we wanted to, have looked at it, or could, for the next meeting, have looked at it and said, what about this area? But otherwise, it's just great to see all those yeses coming up and making progress.
This isn't ours. This is just the default.
Oh, darn.
Sorry. I wish we had 100% score.
I was feeling so good as it was scrolling down.
So we'll all do homework and have a look at it then, is what you're suggesting.
It's
I did have
just
it.
a reminder that it exists, and it might be something we want to look at in a more formal way later in 2019, or maybe even next year.
It might be, it's a way to evaluate our progress
Yeah.
in terms of, is this good enough? Do we want to spend more money in some area? Do we want to focus our attention on some emerging priority?
Yep.
So that was that, and then copies, if you want, of the two that have been done are available. All right.
I think we just got one more item,
Oh, yeah.
8.2. There was nothing arising out of that, just everybody read it and it's your homework for next time.
Sure.
Yeah.
Okay, business continuity planning. I'm very eager to get this off my action items. Just kidding. See some movement on this, I guess. We have, I think I've shared, yeah, so there's a link to the second now emergency management and local government audit report. So they've done two, the town of Sydney and now the Capital Regional District.
Yes.
So the CRD report is linked here because that's the newer of the two, but the Sydney report is linked in previous agendas if you want to see it again. But it, like the Sydney report, the Capital Regional District audit is very clear that the expectation is that local governments engage in continuity planning. So when I'm saying business continuity planning, I'm not saying we need to go out and tell the businesses on the island to do continuity planning. I'm saying we need to do it ourselves.
This is municipality.
Municipal continuity
Municipal.
planning.
So it could read
So
bin continuity.
to quote from the audit report, business continuity plans are concerned with returning the local government's critical services to full operation as soon as possible after an interruption. They address productivity loss and physical damage that may result from disruptions while normal services and operations are being restored. So that's what we're talking about. The audit report specifically says local governments should prepare business continuity plans to ensure that emergency operations and critical services continue despite the loss of power, facilities, infrastructure, or communication systems. So we now have two audit reports that are telling us to do this. I think it's pretty clear that we should. The REPC, so the Regional Emergency Planning Committee, sorry, I think that's what it
The
stands for.
North Shore, West End.
RPC is all of Metro Vancouver,
Okay.
so everyone in my position meets about once a month. And they recently compared work plans, so about once a year they try and look for areas of synergy where we're all doing the same thing, how can we work together? And over 50% of Metro communities that responded are working on business continuity planning. So lots of people are doing it. Again, I've sort of taken excerpts from the audit report if anyone wants to see, what it is, what it should include, that sort of thing, why we should be doing it, what the components are. So last time we met, I was tasked with doing some research on other communities. Who's responsible? Like, what department does this lie in? What's the status of your program, and did you hire a consultant? What is their role and responsibility? What was the cost? That sort of thing. So I was able to get in touch with a couple communities. I'm still hoping to reach out to others, and I can also speak to more of my colleagues in Metro Vancouver because I only just recently learned that 50% of us are working on this, so there's an opportunity there to do more research. But essentially, a neighboring community, for example, hired a consultant to the tune of around $10,000 to create a roadmap document, to do a workshop with the local government and create a way forward. So they talked a little bit about their experience there. Another community actually hired that consultant and brought them in-house. so that community found that it was less expensive to have it as a staff position. In terms of where it lies, it really seems all over. I've heard financial risk manager, manager of corporate services, and then a lot of people in my position are taking on business continuity planning. It certainly seems to end up with the emergency program. Public Works is a huge component of it for sure. So I think one thing I heard across the board is that it really is organization-wide. So if you put it in emergency management, you still need like high-level buy-in essentially, which we have, thankfully. But yeah, I mean, there's different approaches that are taken.
Jen and I talked about this, was it yesterday or the other day? Can't remember.
Lost track.
Yeah, me too. And I've been thinking about it. One of the things I thought is we could, in our management committee meetings, is perhaps form a subcommittee of the relevant department heads, so we work on this together and put together a plan. Or what do you think of that?
I was going to suggest you talk about it at your next management
Yeah, which we have
committee
next Wednesday.
Yeah.
So maybe Jen, that would be a good idea for you to speak to. Are you here? You're not here next?
I'm the chair of that committee.
No, I'm talking about our managers meeting.
Oh.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think
can't
it's
recall.
next week.
Should be there.
So maybe we can do some brainstorming at the management meeting.
Oh, sorry, I thought you were talking about the emergency program management.
No, I'm
No.
thinking our
Manager.
Staff management.
department manager.
Municipality one.
So,
Yeah.
to present to the management.
Yeah, and then we can
Yeah.
brainstorm and maybe have a committee that's specific to this issue. Because as you said, business continuity affects every department, and every department should be involved.
Great.
It sounds like you don't need a motion from this committee.
No.
I think
Um,
I would love to see this on council's radar. I don't know what you think of that.
Well, I think first, let's have that discussion next week. I'm pretty sure our managers meeting is.
Can we, for one thing, for
9 o'clock on the 3rd.
clarification,
Okay, yeah.
for clarification, call it BIM, business continuity planning?
Mhm.
Because when you
Mhm.
read
I agree.
business, I immediately thought
Yeah,
about
that was my
Yeah.
first,
Yeah.
until
Yeah.
Jen educated me, that's what I thought as
Yeah.
well.
Or municipal
Yeah.
continuity or something.
Yeah,
I like
Because
them.
yeah.
Them's good.
BIM
And if-
continuity,
if
business continuity.
The managers,
BCN.
you know, if staff were to bring a report and a recommendation
To council, yes.
to endorse the
Yeah.
direction or something like
Yeah.
that, I think that would really help to bring that to council in
Yeah.
a positive way.
Yeah, but the first step is, yeah, doing that brainstorming at the manager's level and me
So
encouraging
that's
them.
more of an
that
action.
This is, yeah.
And risk management is
Yeah.
part of the.
So we need finance, public works,
Finance
Mhm.
advisory
Definitely.
committee responsible
corporate
too.
services.
Yeah, You need everybody.
Great.
Yeah.
Yes,
So
I will
do
be
you have an
there.
action
Okay,
item
good.
there?
You
You have
got
an
an
action item you can capture?
Yes, I have discussed at management committee meeting to form a subcommittee.
BIM management committee,
BIM.
BIM staff management committee meeting. 'cause-
I threw in committee, but we're not, it's just our management meetings. I'm
Yeah.
getting confused.
Yes.
That's
Sounds-
why I confuse you all the time.
And ultimately, there might be some funding or some subsidies available for
Yeah.
that.
Yeah, I'm waiting to see those.
Keep an eye for that.
I know that there's advocacy happening to the province to do that. Now, how long that takes to come to fruition, I don't know.
That's good.
And after my discussion with Jen and your discussion with the other local governments, it sounds like it's a hot potato that
It's got to be.
is thrown from department to department. So if we do make this
Somebody's,
culture-wide,
Then that will help also, us elected officials talk about it at BBC and
Yeah.
to those folks. If we have it on our,
yeah.
that would be.
And I like the idea of bringing forward a report to council once we've done it at a staff level. Yeah.
Well, that's the end of our formal agenda, except the next meeting to be announced, or to be organised. We discussed that earlier. And
meeting be adjourned.
there's nothing else. I'll call for adjournment.
Good.
Okay, we hereby adjourn.
Thank you, Bill.
Until the next time.
Brian, you're gonna ride anywhere, I'm gonna go down to the cove and grab some lunch and.
I'm grateful to our new chair, vice chair. Thank you. That's great.
Probably going on vacation for that
Has
Is
it got
anybody-
wheels, do you need to ride down and grab some lunch?
I need to go down to the cove and get some lunch because
Okay, I'll give you a ride.
Councillor
I've got
Morris
the
will be
other
meeting up on
stuff.
Thursday.
I know.
Oh, yes.
Well, they were talking about, I forgot you were involved in this committee, but they were talking about doing it at 1, and I'm like, oh. And I have another meeting between 1 and 1:30.
Okay, let's go get
So
some
good luck
lunch.
with your moment.
Okay.
Pardon me?
Good luck.
if you don't mind, that would be great. Whatever, as long as it doesn't have peppers in it.
Peppercorn,
Like,
peppers.
red.
Oh, yeah, the vegetable?
Yeah, I'm really easy. So if you see a super